Hi guys, hope wherever you are and whatever you've been doing, you've had a sensational day. Now I have a question for you. Do you have a child that's about to start primary school next year, and are you unsure how you can help prepare them? Now, if you've answered yes to these two questions, this interview is definitely for you. Involvement of parents in the preparation for children commencing primary school is paramount, as it's one of their lives' biggest milestones. It's an exciting time filled with heightened emotions for children and parents alike. So in these last couple of months in the lead up, there are things you can do to help foster confidence and assurance in children. And lucky for us today, we're joined by a very special guest, Dr. Tessa Grigg, Research and Development Manager from Gymbaroo, to discuss this very important topic. Now, Dr. Tessa will provide expert information and advice as to what we need to focus on when preparing children getting ready for school. Now, Dr. Tessa Grigg is the Research and Education Manager at Toddler, Kindy-Roo, and Gymbaroo, and she's a part-time lecturer at the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, and a teacher of producer of children's music, and she has over 20 years experience in the early childhood and education sector and a wealth of knowledge on this topic. How are you, Dr. Tessa?
I'm fabulous, thank you, Rachel.
Now, in the lead up to the start of school, many parents' hearts are torn between wanting their children to stay little forever, but also wanting them to start growing and start starting their life, building their life. And I guess it is true that parents really are children's first teachers. So as an opening question, I'd love to just know, is there an easy fix formula, I guess, for parents in preparing their children for school or not?
Well, hopefully, as we're going to talk about today, there are some simple things you can do, Rachel, but I look back and I talk to many parents about this kind of stuff, and those last precious few months, it's really about time, just spending time, good quality time with your child, and getting the most out of those days, because you never get them back, and they're precious, very precious.
Yeah. So we've got lots to talk about. We've got some really exciting questions, but before we get stuck into them, we published your article titled Getting Ready for School. So for someone who maybe hasn't read the article, can you just give us a really brief overview on what it's about and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, I was inspired to write it because as you've already said, it is a very big change for parents. Whether it's your first child going to school or your last child going to school, it's quite an emotional time. And I think anything that you can do to reassure yourself or to smooth the process for the child is important, because those first impressions that children have when they go to school, they're sort of a wee bit, they last, and so if they've had a really traumatic start, it's just difficult for them, and it's really difficult for the parent. So this article was about looking at sort of obvious things, but some of them are not obvious until you actually start thinking about it, because I think sometimes we just think, oh, children just get themselves ready for school, but it's not always like that.
Yeah. Well, look, there's so many questions that we have, but I just want to just definitely sort of get started with the chat. So let's get stuck into question number one. Why do you believe parents need to spend time thinking about getting children ready for school, and when it all just come naturally?
Well, yeah, it's sort of what you would think, but the research is really clear that children who have a good range of skills and a broad base of skills before they start school definitely do a lot better, and their achievement results further down the track are much higher. There was a French-Canadian study that was done that showed that children who arrived at school with a good foundation of skills got much better results. So that's the first thing. And sometimes you might think that it's really obvious things like, I need my child to be able to read, or I need my child to be able to write before they go to school, but those are not the key skills. One of the key skills that I've always come across was from a woman called Lillian Katz, and she talked about approach skills. So if you've got a child who can't approach other children or finds it really difficult to get into a game or into a group, they're going to really struggle and have a hard time. So actually, that's a really simple thing that parents can do, is to teach children how to approach someone you don't know. What do you say? And along with stranger danger, you know, that's become sort of, the child has to learn to judge when it's the right time to be able to approach somebody. So, you know, at a playground when children are playing together, if children are taught to go up and say something encouraging or welcoming to another child, then they're more likely to make connections. So that's, and the other thing that's important is it's about a broad range of skills as opposed to just a really narrow set of skills. So I often talk to parents about, you know, just trips to the park, the beach, the library, all those kinds of things are going to give them many of the skills that they need for school. So it's not about expensive things at all. It's often about, again, I think we've talked about this before, Rachel, it's about time, putting time into your children, and, you know, that's what will give them the set of skills that they need.
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, so the skills are more social skills as opposed to skills of, can they count to 5? Can they recite the alphabet? Is that what you're saying? It's
absolutely what. Yeah, it's much more about social skills. They're very important, but along with those social skills come language skills and physical skills, which I think we're going to talk about soon. So that if they've got that broad range of so you're not making an Olympic athlete to go to school. You want a child who's well skilled physically, who's got good language, and who can cope with situations. So it's kind of like the whole child has to be considered. Yeah.
And you do mention in the article too, it's about having the child being able to cope without the parent as well. So, you know, as you said, to be able to interact and do things on their own. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. That's another very important social skill. So if children get their confidence from just being with their parent, then with the parent not there, it's going to be really, really challenging for them. So being able to, as I said before, being able to make connections with other children, which make them feel included and secure and, you know, all those nice things of being social, they need practice at doing that. And that's, I think, mostly that gets done at the preschool. There are usually teachers at preschool who do that. But I think it's really good when it's reinforced at home. So with my own child, I know I used to model. I used to go up and say, "Hi, my name's Tessa. What's your name?" And that was what we had taught my child to go and say to other children, which he would do, which meant he could get involved in a group. And that's what Lillian Katz, she's an American educationalist, and that's what she talks about, actually teaching our children to do, which we tend not to do.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let's get stuck into question number 2. You know, what are the 3 most important skills children need to have before going to school, and how can parents help them achieve that?
Okay, well, I think, as we've already alluded, social skills are really important, and they include things like being able to take turns, being able to share. At home, you don't have to usually wait for too many people unless you're part of a very big family, but many children are part of smaller numbers, and so they don't have to wait long for something, and that is definitely something that you have to do at school. Can they relate to a range of people, particularly in these modern learning environments? They're going to have quite a big range of people that they have to relate to, so it might be teachers, and there will definitely be a number of children, and they'll come from different backgrounds and all sorts of things to what the child might be used to. So social skills definitely are very high. Can they manage emotionally with that whole the bigness of school, feeling like they're on their own, being able to separate from their parent? How good are they at saying goodbye? And some children find that really challenging. I've had children where it's too difficult for them to separate, and so the parent has said, we're just going to wait for 6 months before we start school because this child is clearly not ready to separate. And I think having the courage as a parent to do that kind of thing is really important, to go with where your child's at rather than go, oh, well, it's prescribed, children have to start on this day, so that's the day they should start. I don't think that's a terribly good idea. And then the third thing from my perspective, and as we know, I'm a little bit one-eyed about this, but as far as having a set of physical skills that enable them to function within the classroom, that's really high on my list of priorities. So these are things like eye tracking, and that's a physical skill, you know, being able to move your eyes across the paper, being able to jump, being able to catch a ball, being able to skip. All those things are indicators that their brain is physically ready to cope with the physical aspect of learning. And there are many. And it starts with gross motor skills, which parents are good at developing. So, you know, biking and climbing at the park and stuff, that's all setting your child up for school. And I think a lot of people don't realise that writing actually starts with the shoulder. So if you've got good, strong shoulders and you can hang from the monkey bars, I don't know if you call them monkey bars, we call them monkey bars in New Zealand, the ladder thing that you swing across underneath. If you can do that, then there's a much higher chance that your writing will be easier for you. So, yeah.
Wow.
But you'll notice, Rachel, that I haven't said teach your children to read.
Yes.
Because
if
you don't need to. If they've got all these beautiful skills and behind what they can do, physical, social, and emotional skills, when they get to school, they'll sit down and they'll read. And the schools are so well set up for this. They've got big ranges of books and the teachers know what they're doing. And it's really satisfying for a child if they sit down and read and it's easy. Then that's their good experience of school.
Yeah, and you do mention in the article too that the better prepared they are, the higher the confidence is, which obviously leads them to being better learners. So is that what you're saying at the end of the day? I guess the better we prepare them with all these other skills, naturally they're going to just be a lot more confident within themselves. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep, and there is not a price on confidence. Confidence kind of goes in with those emotional skills. So if they are just comfortable within themselves and feel that they can do things, then they'll do a lot better.
Yeah. And going back to the start of this question too, I think it was point number 2, you mentioned that it's not so much based on the birth date, in the sense that if the child's not ready, that's fine to maybe hold them back 6 months. Have you had any experience with that at all, where you've had any families, so I'm just going to maybe hold the child back and then they do and it's worked for them?
Lots and lots. In fact, I've got one that's just going to school at the beginning of next year. He turned 5 back in July, I think, and he wasn't ready. Absolutely was not ready for school. And when I said goodbye to him yesterday, he was so ready. He did, we in New Zealand, we sing a little song called Happy School Days to You. Now, he probably wouldn't have participated in that, but he came out the front and let them clap, and he was so ready. He's really ready to separate from his mum. He's got a really good skills. Now, the confusing thing for that mother is that that child is very intellectually able, like he's so intellectually able. But the mum was able to look at the situation and go, actually, emotionally, he's just not ready for the rigors of the classroom. And I can think of about another 3 or 4 where the same things happened, where the parents have said, no, this is not right for my child yet. And I think that's really important for parents, to advocate for your child and not be guided by a physical date, because as we know, children develop at such different rates, particularly at this young age.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get stuck into question number 3. Now, what is different about school opposed to preschool the parents need to be aware of when they're actually preparing their children for primary school?
Well, preschool is a lot about exploration and children finding their way and you know, having lots of free choice, and certainly there's, depending on the preschool, there's some structure. But there is more structure at school, but it's not structure like the parents are kind of used to. So the days of rote learning everything and, you know, learning your timetables ad nauseum, and but they're gone. We're trying to develop critical thinkers, and critical thinkers have to have, they have more time allowed to explore. So there is some exploratory work that's now going on in primary schools. But it's different because, of course, they're trying to learn to read and write. There's a lot going on for a child at school. But I think any opportunity that a parent gets to be invited to where the schools tell you what they're doing and how they're doing it is a really good idea, because you will find school is quite different to what you were used to. So one of the things that I will do with children quite a bit is, which is different to what we used to do, we used to just get them to, you know, learn their colours or be able to recite the names of animals or whatever. Now a question that I've asked my children is, why do we have windscreen wipers?
Oh.
And so that's not a tell me rote learn, because you can't rote learn something like that, but tell me, give me your perceptions. Why do we have windscreen wipers? And the answers are just hysterical. And yeah, it is. But they're right. You know, I always look for the rightness in the answer. But one little boy told me that the reason, he was quite young, he wasn't quite 3, but the reason we have windscreen wipers, Tessa, was so that we got somewhere to put our the wiper blades.
Oh.
So,
He's not
you
wrong.
know, he's not wrong. But that's the kind of child we're having. We're making children who can nut out problems. This is what our 21st century children are. They're quite different. So that's challenging for parents.
Yeah, and I think definitely, given that historically, you know, we've all been sort of taught in a cookie cutter method, in the sense, and that's fine, and that's the education system, and that's how it's been, and that's how in many ways it still is. But the jobs of the future are such that, you know, there was this incredible Dell research done just over 12 months ago that a large percentage, I think nearly 80% of the jobs in the future haven't even been invented yet. So we actually do need to develop our children as critical thinkers, because, you know, the technology and the way of the future isn't the way it has been in the past. So we really need them to develop this way of thinking laterally on all levels. You know, it's incredible.
Yeah, which goes back to my point about giving them a set of skills that are transferable to whatever they're needing to do. So that's with physical skills and music, of course, and we know I'm a little bit passionate about music, but all those skills, set them up with a set of skills that they can do. And that's what parents need to be doing in that preschool time.
Yeah. And getting back to that confidence, I think when you've got a confident child that believes they can go out and do anything, they will, and they can. Their brains are supple because they're empowered. So I think confidence really has a lot to do with it, and actually having them prepared so when they are at school, they're comfortable. I think so. Very important. Yeah.
Very.
Well, let's get into question number 4. Do you have any hot tips for parents as they start their children at school?
Well, yes, I have. And I've got 2 things that you can do. One thing is to make sure that your children can work their lunch boxes.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds really silly, but people, what they tend to do is they go and buy a flash new lunchbox for the birthday that happens just before they go to school. And then you see these children sitting at school with their flash new lunchbox that's so exciting, and they can't open it, or they can't work what's inside, or they can't open their drink bottle. And some of them are too anxious to actually ask a teacher for help because they don't feel that they know them well enough. So, you know, in those last few months, use the lunchbox. Don't buy the lunchbox the week before they go to school. Have a lunchbox that they're really confident, because, of course, we go back to other things that are important, and is if they don't get enough to eat at lunch, then the afternoon's going to be really, really hard for them. So that's one practical tip. The other practical thing, and this was actually given to me by a Gymbaroo mother with my own child, and she said, and I'd never thought about this, even as a teacher, I'd never thought about it, but she said, when you get home, have your dinner at 3:30. And I went, really? And she went, yep. Eat your meat and vegetables or whatever it is that you have as a good quality meal at 3:30, or the time that they come home from school. I'm not sure what time it is in Australia. In New Zealand, it's about 3 o'clock they leave school. And then what happens is, because if you don't do that, what happens is your child gets home, they're exhausted, they're hungry, they eat a lot of snacks because they're so hungry, and often snack food isn't quite as good quality as maybe the main meal, nutritionally. And then by the time they get to their evening meal time, maybe at 5:30, 6 o'clock, or even 6:30, they're exhausted and they're over it and they won't eat. And then they fall asleep in their dinner and they're off to bed. So I've tried this, and I know many parents who've tried it, and it works really, really well. You don't have to eat dinner at 3:30 for the rest of your life. It's only a short time. And in my own experience, what happened was we had dinner straight after school for about, I don't know, a couple of terms. And then I was able to eke it out. And we were back eating dinner at the more normal time with all of us. But at the end of the year, my son started school in March. At the end of the year, he was exhausted, and we were back eating dinner at 3:30 for the last few weeks of the term. So you sort of, as a parent, you kind of get to know. But it was just such a hot tip. And I think it enabled him to keep up the nutrition in a better way and to last better at school, so that they're not depleted and finding it hard. So and also you don't end up with such overtired children. So yeah, those are my 2 hot tips.
I mean, I love both of them, and I definitely haven't heard the eating dinner at 3:30 tip before, but I'm sure there's going to be plenty of parents doing that now for sure. Thanks for that one. It's a hot tip.
That's a hot tip.
Well, as always, you've given us some really insightful information today, which we're really, really grateful for. So if any families and parents want to get in touch with you after this, where can they find you?
They can find me through the Gymbaroo website, or they can email me, tessa.grigg@gymbaroo.com.au, and I'm more than happy to answer questions or elaborate on anything I've said, and I take it they'll be able to read the article, which goes into a little bit more depth. So yeah, that's how you can get hold of me.
As always, it's been an absolute pleasure, and can't wait to chat again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Rachel.
Right, bye.
Bye.